getting to pre-test some of the test questions, and I understand Edmond is doing some of that this year. That's the only district I know of that is. Bartlesville is? Okay, good. Norman, good. The other consortium is called Smarter Balance Consortium, not to be confused with the margarine, Smarter. The grand picture is both of these consortiums are going to develop these 21st century assessments that are intuitive. They tell us that a child will be able to answer a math question and explain how he answered the math question, and even if the answer's wrong, he will get partial credit if his reasoning was logical. And this will all be done by computer. Yeah. But both of these consortium are going to develop tests, and they're going to put it together and come up with a national assessment. They told us in August there were going to be 4 assessments each year. Every child, grades 3 through 12, will be assessed 4 times a year. This would be a cumulative assessment. They came back in December and said, oh, wait a minute. There will be 4 assessments a year, but 2 of them will be optional. So right now we know that there will be 4 assessments a year. They will all involve being online. Every child in your district, grades 3 through 12, online assessing 4 times a year. Some of you are getting that panic look that I get from time to time. We don't know how many of those 4 assessments are going to count towards the final grade. Now, something interesting I learned last week from the State Department of Education is that because Park assesses language arts, literacy, and math, and doesn't assess science and social studies, we're still going to give science and social studies EOIs. I'm assuming those will also be online, so go to ka-ching in your head for how many more kids are going to be testing online every year. This, by the way, will be 2014-15 when we start these assessments. Here are some Park sample questions that have been released in the past. This one is an innovative language arts sample. This is supposed to be a 4th grade level. What it's actually asking the kid to do, here it comes, is create a story from the pictures by dragging and dropping, then clicking under each picture to record the narrative that tells the story, then hit play to play back the story and see the whole thing. So this is storytelling without writing. That's pretty cool. But it involves some technology skills that some of our 4th graders aren't going to have. This is a 5th grade sample. What they're being asked to do, there are 4 content errors on this website. They're going to click on a hyperlink for the National Geographic website, do research, find the correct information, then they're going to come back and edit this website and save it, and that is the assessment. 5th grade.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you guys were getting that deer in the headlights look that I get when I think about this.
What grade was that?
Now, this one isn't going to make you quite as well. It actually is. It's going to make you crazy in technology, but as a former language arts teacher, this one really makes my head hurt in content. This is a secondary math question. They've given them data. They've listed the states, the graduation rates, the per pupil expenditure, and the PTR, which I forget what that is, something about tax rates. They're going to use technology to plot graduation rate versus PPE on a scatter plot that allows prediction of graduation rate from PPE and describe the shape of the distribution. Then, if a linear shape is apparent, they're going to use a spreadsheet, statistical software, or calculator capability to fit a least squares line to summarize the nature of that trend. Then they're going to interpret the slope. And eventually down here, they're going to write. They're going to explain. This is a secondary math assessment from Park. Yeah, high school. I would say this would be upper secondary, because I'm telling you, I couldn't do it. And I took 2 statistics classes in my PhD program. So, here's the part of Park that scares me a little bit, the part of Common Core that scares me a little bit. When you start looking at Common Core, there isn't a quote-unquote technology section. They tell us in the introduction and I've cited on each slide where the stuff comes from so you can find it later, that kids have to be able to use technology to be ready for college, career, workforce. They have to be able to gather, comprehend, evaluate, synthesize, and report on information and ideas. That's one little statement, but that's a lot of stuff. They've got to be able to find good information. Do our kids have that skill? Some of them. A lot of them don't.
Nope.
A lot of them go to Google and type in the broadest search term they can think of. And then when they get 2 million results, they go, wow. They've got to be able to comprehend. There's that basic literacy skill. If they can't read it, it's not going to do them any good to find it. They have to be able to evaluate it. Now, this is a skill that I really worry about our students having. This is something I've been preaching for a long time. We've got to teach kids not to believe everything they find on the internet. We've got to teach kids not to be my father. My father, bless his heart, he's 85, but everything he gets via email, he is sure is true. So I get these emails, you need to never go to a shopping mall again because. Finally, they need to be able to synthesize, take ideas from here, 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 and put together a presentation and report without violating copyright on what they found. They have to be able to conduct original research in order to solve problems. Is this a real-life skill kids are going to need? You bet. Is it a skill they possess right now? Maybe, maybe not. And they need to be able to analyze and create a high volume and extensive range of print and non-print texts. So they have to be not just researching, they need to be creating. A lot of our schools, including the district I work in, have some pretty rigid barriers to kids creating and posting work online. Part of that is because they know that we haven't taught kids how to do that responsibly. We know that kids can post things that can ruin their lives, so we've got to get the education component in there. It tells us in the introduction on page 7 that students who are college and career ready use technology and digital media strategically and capably. They know which tool to use, in which instance, and they know how to use it effectively. So what that means, according to Common Core, is how to tailor their searches. This is something librarians have been preaching for a long time now, but it hasn't gotten to all of the congregants yet. They need to be able to integrate what they learn online with what they learn offline. So again, synthesizing information. And they need to be, again, I just kind of stated this, knowledgeable about what various mediums do. Why would you use a PowerPoint here as opposed to a Prezi? Why would you use a VoiceThread presentation as opposed to a PowerPoint? They need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of various mediums. And in order to do that, what do we have to do?
Teach them.
We got to know the mediums, we got to expose them to the mediums, we got to let them have experience with them. And it's really hard to do that when you're in a school that has one mobile cart for 28 classrooms. Okay. When we get to the writing standards, this is where we find most of the technology. There is very little explicit discussion about technology and math at all, despite the fact that we saw the assessment question that had them doing scatter plots and using statistical software and. But they need to be able to use technology to create, refine, and collaborate on writing. Collaboration appears a lot in Common Core standards. We want kids to be able to work well effectively online. This is something very, very few schools are doing, again, because we know we haven't taught them the responsibility to do that sort of thing. So, collaborative online work. They have to be adept at gathering information, evaluating it, and citing it accurately. That makes librarians happy. In the writing anchor standards, we see that kids have to be able to use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing and to collaborate with others. So now we're not just researching and collaborating, we're also publishing using technology. Again, they have to gather information, evaluate it, and avoid plagiarism. And writing for science, social studies, and technical subjects, exactly the same standard. The interesting thing about CCSS, though, and one reason I'm excited about it, is the standard spiral. PASS was always frustrating to me because if I taught 11th grade language arts, a lot of the skills that I had in my 78 pages of PASS skills were not covered in 10th grade or 9th grade. In Common Core, once a skill, when you get up here to the 12th grade level, that skill began in kindergarten, is getting increasingly complex as we go. And we're going to look at one strand to see how that happens. Oh, there's spiral. This is Writing Standard 6. And when you're looking at these standards, the first letter tells you what kind of standard it is, the second letter or number tells you the grade level, and the last one tells you the standard number. So for kindergarten, with guidance and support from adults, they're going to explore a variety of digital tools to produce and publish writing, including in collaboration with peers. So what might we do in a kindergarten classroom? Create a story using any kind of online tool. They might create a 2-slide PowerPoint. They might, there's all sorts of things they could do. But they're doing it with guidance and support from adults. In first grade, we're still using this adult support, but they're not exploring, they're using a variety of digital tools. Now, we're not just playing with them, we're actually applying them. I skipped second grade because it's just like first grade. But in third grade, we still have that guidance and support, but we're using technology to produce and publish writing using keyboarding skills. How many of your kids have keyboarding before third grade? Yay for you guys. Because the vast majority of our schools, that's not happening.
You're right.
As well as to interact and collaborate with others. So by third grade, they're supposed to be typing up and publishing work. In fourth grade, check out this part down here, they need to have good enough keyboarding skills to type a full page in one sitting. And I think the assumption is one sitting's not going to be 3 days. In fourth grade, we also see that they are using the internet. That really hasn't come into play before. And there's a reason for that. What do fourth graders possess that third, second, first, and kindergarten don't? A little bit more common sense. Tiny bit. Tiny bit. But they are old enough for us to be teaching them some basic internet safety. Does that mean I would turn them loose on the internet? But with some guidance, using a tool like LiveBinder, where the teachers picked out the resources and the kids are exploring them. In fifth grade, same standard. We're still getting that guidance and support from adults, but they're using a technology, including the internet, to publish writing and produce, to interact and collaborate with others, and now we're able to type 2 pages in a single setting. By 6th grade, we don't have that adult guidance anymore. We're using technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing, blah, 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 and we can type 3 pages in a single setting. So one implication of this to me is that we've got to start teaching keyboard at a much lower level. Now you get into issues, early childhood teachers tell me that their little fingers can't touch all those keys. Well, they can if you get them a little tiny keyboard. Admittedly, a full-size keyboard, they probably would have trouble. But what I found, we did a one-to-one grant in 19 middle schools across Oklahoma a couple years ago, and some of my victims from that grant are in here. We went into middle schools and saw 8th graders who were typing like this. We saw 8th graders who were typing like I do, with 4 fingers and a thumb, because I never had keyboarding. And we saw some that were typing with beautiful keyboarding skills, because they had taught themselves, because they'd been lucky enough to be in an elementary school where that was taught. We've got to not let that be hit and miss. It's a skill that kids are going to really need for the rest of their lives. Taking the same standard on up, In the 7th grade, they're publishing and they're using links to cite sources and to link to sources. In the 8th grade, they're presenting relationships between information and ideas efficiently. So they're bringing in all these different resources and compiling and synthesizing them into one. And then the standards on the secondary level do 9, 10, and 11, 12. They turn into bands. But let's look at 9th grade. They are able to produce, publish, and update individual or shared writing projects, taking advantage of technology's capacity to link to other information and to display information flexibly and dynamically. So we're talking about kids having some sort of online presence that they can update, like a blog, a wiki. Are those things allowed in your district?
Yes.
Some districts. In 11th and 12th grade, they're going to update individual or shared writing projects in response to ongoing feedback, including new arguments or information, using the web as an interactive classroom, basically, where they're interacting with people from across the country and across the world, sharing ideas, sharing resources, just like real life. So that is one strand in Common Core, and you can see how it gets more complex, more complex, more complex. But in order to get to these 11th and 12th grade standards, you had to do those things in kindergarten and 1st grade. It spirals, it's logical, it makes sense. This is why I'm really excited about Common Core. The thing I'm not so excited about is there is no federal funding for technology. Title IID was eliminated.
Right.
There's never been state funding for technology. And most of you don't have bond issues for technology like we're lucky enough to have. A couple more brief things. Technology and speaking and listening standards. In speaking and listening standards, they acknowledge the fact that a lot of communication now is electronic. And even though you're not speaking or listening in a technical sense, you are communicating. So they're telling us that we've got to teach kids how to communicate effectively in an electronic medium. We've also got to teach them that that form of communication isn't necessarily appropriate everywhere. I had a principal the other day complaining that he couldn't get kids to quit writing you for YOU in essays because they've grown up with textlish. They're also telling us that kids need to understand how to use digital texts. It's not going to be long before that's pretty much all they interact with. A lot of colleges and universities are going completely to online textbooks. And they have a lot of advantages that hardbound books don't have, including hyperlinks, video, audio. We've got to train kids to use those, and in order to train them to use them, you've got to have access to them. Also in speaking and listening, they need to integrate and evaluate information presented in diverse media and format. In other words, they need to be able to take information that they see online, that they see in a video, that they read in a book, and put all of that together, synthesize it into one product. And make strategic use of digital media. We're back to that strategic use. Knowing when to use what tool, why a particular tool is advantageous for a particular kind of project. This is exactly the same as the reading and literature standard. Okay, let's talk about next steps, because that's where I think the key is. Hardware. By 2014-15, as I've said, we know we're going to be testing every child in your district from 3rd through 12th grade online at least twice a year, probably 4 times a year. Maybe 6 times a year when you throw in EOIs. So the first thing schools need to be thinking about is how do we get the hardware for this to happen? And more importantly than how do we get the hardware to test them all, how do we get the hardware for the kids to build these skills that they're going to need to take those tests? So that they're comfortable editing a website, or they're comfortable clicking hyperlinks, or typing a full page in one sitting. We've got to have the actual hardware in the building for kids to do that. And we've got to not make it a 1-hour computer lab visit once a week. They're not going to build the skills doing that. Particularly if that 1-hour computer lab visit is using some sort of software program. The software, kids have got to be comfortable with some platform of productivity software. They've got to understand word processing, they've got to understand spreadsheets, they've got to understand databases. I don't understand databases, just saying. They confuse me. I use spreadsheets for everything. But these are skills that Common Core seems to want our kids to have. So this is something kids are going to have to be familiarized with, not just in some discrete technology class, but in every classroom they're in. Infrastructure, huge. Do you have the bandwidth for every kid in your district to be online at the same time? E-rate money is still coming. That's the only money we get from the federal government. E-rate needs to be really focused on getting your infrastructure prepared for what Common Core is asking of us. So you need to really be looking at E-rate. Common Core has said thus far, PARC has said thus far, let me put it that way, that wireless will be an acceptable route for testing. So that might be something else you're considering with infrastructure. Hardwiring enough computers for every kid in your school would be an interesting proposition, at least. But providing Wi-Fi might be it also has its issues, but it might be the solution. And finally, what I think is most important is skills. We have got to give our kids the skills. We've got to begin keyboarding, probably kindergarten, first grade. We've got to begin using software at that same grade level. I don't mean that they're creating a 28-slide PowerPoint, but I mean that they're beginning to understand how to operate a toolbar and a mouse and what happens when you right-click. These are skills that they're going to have to develop at a young age to be able to achieve the kinds of skills they're wanting them to have by the middle of elementary school. Okay, questions? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
The question I have is, we're talking about they want to use spreadsheets and that sort of thing, but that's not going to be built into the test question that they're going to click and it's going to load up a calculator. It's going to be dependent on what each district has. So like some districts might be using Google Docs, some districts might be using Microsoft Office, some might be using OpenOffice, and so there'll be quite a bit of difference between districts. Am I getting you right on that?
Right. That was a big issue for me when I first saw the PARC assessment questions, because one of the first math questions I saw required them to use Excel. And I went insane, because I was at the State Department of Education then and working with districts across the state that used OpenOffice, that used Google Docs, that used Mac products. PARC has said that it will not be platform specific, but that all, for example, spreadsheets, have the same functionality. Schools will have whatever software they have, and the kids will use that software to answer the assessment question. There will not be a software component built into the assessment question, is how PARC has explained it. But as I said, they've changed their minds since August on how many tests we're taking, so I'm not swearing by anything they say. By the way, PARC and Smarter Balance announced at the end of last week and got me all excited that they had awarded a huge grant to Pearson to develop a technology tool for districts. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. All it is going to be is a survey tool. The state is going to be asking you twice a year to send them data on your infrastructure, your hardware, your software. And then they will submit that to PARC or Smarter Balance, and they can say, oh yeah, they're not ready. I don't know what else is going to come of that, but they're really excited because it's going to be an open source survey system. And they're giving Pearson a lot of money to do that. Okay, other questions? The examples that I showed you from the PARC assessments have come from presentations that I've been at, that PARC has done. It is really difficult to find assessment samples online. The State Department does have a few on their Common Core page. They have some presentations they have done showing sample assessments, and it's from the SDE Common Core page. But email me and I'll send you these. And somebody, oh, you bet. Very nice, there's an easier way, but this is so much fun. I'm really not here today to freak all of you out. I'm here today to say you need to be paying attention to this or you're going to be really freaked out. Somebody along in here had a question. Yes?
And I work in the computer lab at an elementary school,
writing, I can't even fathom the pre-Kers that I see doing that. Not that they're not, you know, they're wonderful little children and stuff, but I can't imagine them doing that. And then, am I crazy to be thinking that?
No, I don't think so. She's saying that pre-K kids don't have the skills to be doing the kind of things Common Core seems to expect of them. I think you will, if you'll think about it, you have some kids who do have those skills, but they're the kids who are doing this at home. The kids that it's obvious that at home they're playing online games or they're doing something, they know how to operate a mouse, they know how to right click or left click.
How many that use a computer before? All have maybe 3 raise their hands in pre-K. They're not getting on them like I thought they would be at home, so we have to start with just, like I have to put a little sticker on the mouse button so they'll know which one to click and stuff, and if that sticker comes off, it freaks them out.
Right.
They don't know,
They don't know left and right yet.
It's little tiny baby steps forever,
Yes.
so I can't imagine getting them to this point in pre-K or kindergarten.
And part of it is how often you have them.
Once a week for
Yeah.
45 minutes.
If you have kids once a week for 45 minutes, are you going to get them to this level of technology? Probably not.
It's going to have to be total
But again, it comes back to what hardware you have in your building for kids to have access to technology, when all you've got is a computer lab that is shared by all these people.
Right.
Yes?
It seems like the way this should work is that the labs go, that there aren't computer labs. They've got to be in the classroom. They're in your classroom, maybe, but a computer lab, even if you go every day, that's not.
Yeah, it's going to have to be
That's true.
total immersion.
The best possible answer is to integrate technology in the classroom, where the teacher is using technology with the kids on a regular basis. It has a huge impact. But again, hello, I feel like I'm on stage now. Again, you've got to have the funding to do that. And I don't have an answer for that question. I have made myself very unpopular at some state meetings by asking that question, where is the money supposed to come from? And I don't get answers. Yes?
I'm wondering, if it's 2015, are the
14.
12th grade,
14, 15, yeah.
if the children that are going to take this test, are they going to be expected to do that Common Core in the 9th grade with not being taught any of those skills that day, first day on the test? There are no concessions at all. So the
No.
2014 students stop the spiral.
Right.
Their spiral is not there.
She's saying 2014-15, we start Common Core assessments. What happens to kids who haven't been taught Common Core? What our district is doing, what a lot of districts are doing, and I was an English teacher. We started this year with pre-K2 curriculum Common Core. Next year we're going to bump it up to 3rd grade because the pre-K2 kids right now are the kids who will first take those Common Core assessments as 3rd graders. We're spiraling, and it's very difficult because there is no curriculum out there for Common Core. You're having to invent it yourself. There are people who are selling curriculums that they say are Common Core. I have not seen one yet that is. Because the main difference between Common Core and what you're doing right now is the level of rigor. It's that critical thinking component, the higher order thinking skills. But if you're teaching PASS with that critical thinking component put in, your kids are going to be ready. Common Core does not, except in a very few discrete math areas, doesn't have subject matter that we haven't taught in the past. It's just that they're asking kids to think about it, to reason, to apply their knowledge, rather than just memorize rote information and spit it back.
So what's going to happen when all these students cannot do that?
I have no answer to that. It's kind of what's happened with NCLB, because we all knew that as it ramped up every year, we were going to get to a point that no school can do that. We're not ever going to get 100% of our kids to be perfect. Sadly, we have to use real human beings in public education. And I think it'll be the same thing with Common Core. I don't think you're going to see very many states that are going to knock the top off Common Core the first year. But it's something that will improve.
So that means the 3rd grader that doesn't pass is going to be a 3rd grader next year, so that's why it's going to be 3rd graders, so
Well,
they didn't spiral.
that's true right now. Your third graders that don't pass reading right now are gonna be third graders until they're 21.
Yeah, exactly.
Just saying. I am not opinionated in any way about public education. Yes. The question was, can we use textbook money for technology? This is something I think Superintendent Breezy is very much in favor of, from comments I have heard her make. I don't know whether it'll ever happen. I don't know whether the legislature will go along with it. There is state law about textbook adoptions. I was in a meeting last week where they were discussing the fact that reading in Common Core is so different from reading in PASS that schools are concerned that their reading textbooks are really not adequate. But next year's adoption is science textbooks. You have to adopt science textbooks. You can't adopt anything else. It's science textbooks. The answer to that question was, could we adopt reading instead of science? Well, no, it's state law. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I know a lot of states have done that, and it's been very successful in a lot of states. They're buying technology instead of books, and they're using online resources. Yes?
What about our state's influx of ELLs? I'm sure other states as well. What's how's that going to fix your answer?
You're not going to like this. She asked about the influx of ELLs. There is a very small section, it's an appendix of Common Core, and on the blog that I gave you, I have a direct link to the Common Core website. It has a little asterisk by it, because there's a website called commoncore.org. That's not them. Commoncore.org is trying to sell you curriculum. But they got some good free stuff too. There's a small appendix on special needs students, ELL, special ed. Basically, there are very, very, very few exemptions on Common Core state standards. They expect us to get all kids to these levels. Whether they speak English, whether they can sit up in a chair. There are very, very, very few exemptions from Common Core. But you'll need to read up on that on the Common Core website. Yes?
It sounds like to me that some schools that have maintained some higher scores, they don't get enough Title I money with computer lab teachers. Our assumption would be conflict because we do not have pre-K through especially second grade computer lab teachers. And when we go to computer lab, it is very hard, especially at first, because our computer lab is wiped clean every day. And it doesn't hold any websites in OKC. And so every day, especially with the younger ones, K and 1, we have to go through, even once they learn to log in. I have 26 first graders, and I have to go through and log in www.math. For 26, my target, my 26 students.
Yeah, time's up in the computer lab. That is something, I guess it kind of goes back to preparing for Common Core. There are discussions that need to take place in your school district about how technology is being used. And I know that a lot of you are teachers, librarians, counselors, peons like me. You don't have the power to say, hey, this is crazy, this is what we need to do. But you need to talk to somebody between you and the big dogs and say, here's what I heard at the OTA Encyclopedia Conference. We need to be very concerned about this. What can we do? Get them fired up, let them go up a level, and eventually you get up there to the person that can make decisions. Your district needs to be thinking about this and talking about this. I have been in districts where they wipe everything at the end of the day, where teachers find the perfect website to show their kids tomorrow and it's gone when they come back. I hate that. I understand from a tech perspective why they do that. It saves them having to come in later and clear off computers when you download 47 screen backgrounds or whatever. But again, it goes back to teaching them the skills to allow them to build the skills. I'm sorry, that's not a really good answer, but and the schools that get no Title I funds are going to be hurt because Title I is about all schools have right now to buy technology with. Yes?
And that's another issue too for technology department, I think. And we have a technology director and what, 6 or cats. But you're gonna build this huge technology system, and we do get to
exactly. But at least you have a tech director. I've worked with a lot of small rural schools that have a part-time guy that comes from 200 miles away once a month. Yeah, or large urban districts where they have so many schools and so many machines. But again, that's something I didn't put on my list up here. It's something you're going to have to consider. Do you have the personnel to support the technology, to support the kids getting the skills?
I'd like to apologize, because I've been around a long time, and apparently I'm part of the system that educated the legislatures and other powers that be that developed all of these things, and couldn't figure out how we were gonna do it. You know, so maybe, I just look at the people who are doing this and going, well, how can we logically do that?
Yeah. Well, you know, we make the national news for our legislature on a regular basis because of some of the bills they propose. That's one thing to be proud of, being an Oklahoman. We usually end up in Dave's top 10 list or something because of our legislature. But I think what we can do is we can talk to our own personal legislators. I don't know if they'll listen to you at all. Some of them will not because you don't have money, but some of them will. Some of the people at the state capitol are really there because they care about Oklahoma. They probably really care about our kids and public education. And if you'll communicate with them, they might listen. And with that, I think we are out of time. So I really appreciate